Hey everyone, welcome to Regents Physics. I'm going to be the teacher for the class. My name is Mr. Clow. The best way to pronounce it is like you're about to say cloud, but then you drop the D. Mr. Clow. I'm going to be doing a few of these videos for the hybrid model. So just be aware of that. I'll mention a little bit more about expectations for this class. Now, the first thing is, I'm sure everyone wants to know is what is physics? Uh, in the best way to explain it, physics is literally the science of everything. It explains any and everything you've ever wondered. Why planes fly, why is the sky blue, how curveballs work. All these things can be explained by physics. In fact, chemistry and biology and earth science, those other sciences, are actually just subsets of physics. Chemistry is physics focusing on atoms. Biology is physics focusing on animals and things like that. So a lot of people have actually explained that physics is the one true science. It's the science of the world. Um, because this is such a broad definition, what we're going to discuss in this class is actually a little bit more focused on discussing the fundamentals about how objects move and why they move. So every topic that we discuss is going to be focusing on one of these two questions: how do objects move and why do they move? One quick warning that I want to make is that this class is very math heavy. A lot of people don't believe me when I first say this, but for the most part, this is almost a lot more closer to a math class than it is to a science class. In fact, it's going to be a lot of calculations. So just be aware of that this is more of a math class rather than a science class. Now, one thing that I want to point out is for a lot of people, this class can be extremely tough, or at least tough in the beginning. And mainly, it's not because the content is tough, and it's not because the work is too hard. It's more because of the fact that the classes run a little bit differently than other classes. For the most part, unlike other classes that require either calculation, being able to do it like in math, or memorization, like in some of the other sciences, this has like a little combination of everything. So you need to have both really good math skills as well as good reading comprehension skills, something that a lot of people kind of struggle combining the two. But as the year goes on, you will start to adapt a little bit as long as you make sure that you are practicing what I mentioned. Now, this is actually a really good example of what type of question you would see on the Regents. This was taken from Algebra 2 Trig a few years ago. I saw it and I thought it was amazing because this is pretty much identical to what a question would look like, where you have a bunch of information, your reading comprehension skill is to figure out what each number is supposed to represent and be able to plug it into an equation that's provided. The only difference between this question and what you would see in a Regents class, in the physics class, is that this equation and this information would be on a separate sheet of paper with other equations. And that's kind of what makes it a little bit tougher, is that you'll have to use the same skills you would do in here, but then try to figure out which of the equations for monthly payment you're going to use based off of what was given. But again, you'll see what I mean later on. I will note that this is a lot more complicated of an equation than we would say. The equations we deal with are much nicer, but like I said, it still can be tricky at first. Another note is that this class does end in a Regents, so the goal is that your grades on tests and your grades in this class should reflect what is expected that you get on the Regents. So if you're getting 80s in this class, the idea is that that's pretty much what you're expected to get on the Regents, about an 80. I say this only because a lot of people sometimes come in thinking that it's going to be an easy A because it's a Regents class, but for the most part, this is almost like an unofficial honors or AP class. I wouldn't say AP class, but it is much tougher than your generic Regents class. So if you want an A, you want to get above an 85, you want to make sure that you work with it. Now, I know for the most part, none of you have taken the chemistry regions last year because of the whole quarantine, but one good rule of thumb was that whatever grade you would have gotten on the chemistry regions, that's what you would have what you're expected to get in this class. Though I will say most people tend to do better on the physics regions than they do in the chemistry regions by about 5 points. Some things that you need to make sure that you have: bring a pen or pencil. I highly recommend a pencil with an eraser because, like I said, you're going to be doing calculations, you're going to be making mistakes. You want to be erase that. You want to be able to erase that. In particular, labs almost should only be done in pencil because, again, you're going to make mistakes, and that's fine. You want to be able to bring a scientific calculator or a graphing calculator. Uh, if you don't have one, that's fine. You're either going to be renting one out from the math department, or I have some extras in my room that you could borrow. You're just going to need to make sure you wipe it down, sanitize it before and after you use it. And then the other thing is you want to make sure that you have a notebook or a binder. Basically, you need something that you can write down information in, like do nows, and you should have something that can collect documents. I would actually recommend the 3-ring binder with some loose leaf. Um, One thing that I want to note: if you want to succeed in this class, you really need to make sure that you write things down. A lot of people tend to believe that they could just remember things and that they can take a passive role, watch me do stuff, and remember it. It never happens. So make sure that you actually write things down. Now, the grading policy is new compared to other classes, but this is what's going on with every science department. Uh, there's two categories: assessments and class participation, and both of them are going to be worth 50% of your overall grade. Now, to break it down, assessments is essentially going to be the things that you're graded on based off of, is it correct or is it wrong? Is it right? Is it wrong? And did you do everything that was necessary? Class participation, on the other hand, is more graded, are assignments that are graded on completion. I'm going to go over them in a little bit more detail. So assessments are based off of 3 categories. Labs, I try to hold my labs on most double days. So if you have a double period with me, you're pretty much you should expect to have a lab. Not every double day, but most. And this is going to be a combination of hands-on and virtual labs. Um, Quizzes, they're going to be held at the end of each unit, like every 3 or 4 weeks, and they're going to be covering the material that we discussed so far. It's going to have a combination of multiple choice and free response questions. And then the quarterly exams are essentially longer quizzes, and they're going to be held at the end of each quarter, as the name implies. I'll go into much more detail with quizzes and quarterlies as we get closer to that. But for the most part, all 3 of these things are going to be graded on uh, what you wrote down. Is it correct? Did you make any mistakes? Things like that, like you normally would expect. Quick aside about labs: as you should know, because this is a Regents class, you are required to complete 1,200 minutes of lab time. One thing that I want to note, though, is that while other science classes that you've taken, they usually gave you more labs than you needed so that you can miss a few here and there. That's not the case here. You have to do every single lab. So yeah, keep that in mind. I'm going to be hounding you. If you miss a lab from first quarter, I'm going to be hounding you second, third, fourth until you get it done. So you need to make it's better to do it on time the first rather than have to do it 3 quarters later. All right, class participation. So there's 5 categories for this. So first category is classwork and homework. So anytime you're given an assignment, a worksheet, a do now, ed puzzle video, which I'll explain more later, that's what's in this category. Now, for the most part, this is only graded based off of completion. So did you do the classwork? Good job, you get points. Did you do the homework? You get full credit. No real looking into whether they're right or wrong. Discussions is the second category. This is basically how involved are you in the class? Are you asking questions? Are you answering questions? Or when I call you to give your answer, are you saying I don't know, I didn't do it, I was having trouble? So the more involved you are, the more points you get. Contact. So this is going to be based off of how well you respond to messages that I send to you through Remind. Again, I'll mention that in a bit. Or your ability to actually respond to me and ask me questions whenever you need it. So for the most part, for that second section, it's only based off of if you need to ask questions. If you're acing all the material, if you're clearly understanding what's going on, I don't really expect you to be asking me questions. But if you're failing topics, if you're struggling to complete these ed puzzles and these worksheets, and you are clearly struggling, then I expect you to be asking me questions. And if you're not, you're going to lose points in this category. The fourth category is behavior. So again, how nice are you? Are you interacting with me and your fellow classmates in a respectful way? Are you following directions? Cool, you get a easy 100 on there. So and you want to make sure you're not distracting students. And then the last one is effort and activity. So I'm going to be looking at how much effort are you actually putting into this class? Are you coming into class on time? Are you being prepared? Do you have a really good attendance? Are you making sure that you're asking me questions or asking other people questions in order to get the material? Are you making sure to make corrections on any mistakes you make? Things like that are all in the effort category. So what I'm going to do is at the end of each week, I'm going to give you a grade based off of these five categories. Now there is a rubric that's posted on Canvas, so you should be able to see kind of how the grade is broken down in each section. If you're having trouble, let me know. I'll try to give it in a slightly different way. Um, Classwork and homework, I just want to reiterate a little bit. So as I said before, classwork and homeworks are all the worksheets, all the videos, all the do now questions, everything that I pretty much provide to you to do practice problems. Um, they're either provided in class or online. You're usually going to have a few days to do them. So my goal is to assign it in the beginning of the week, and it's basically due 1 week later. Um, so you want to make sure that you work on it. I do want to note, don't cheat. I know it's easy to cheat. I know it might be better so that you don't have to watch this, that you could just ask a friend for the answers, but don't do it because it really makes it harder for you to be able to do well on the other assignments, like the tests, where I'm actually going to be probably pulling questions from the worksheets and from the do nows onto tests. So you want to make sure that you understand them. And I just want to reiterate that it's graded on completion. So just do your best. There's no reason to cheat because it doesn't matter if you got a 20 or 100. You guys are getting the same grade. So the Ed Puzzle videos. So I'm going to be doing recordings like this of all my lectures. I'm going to pre-record them and then I'm going to post them on Ed Puzzle. So I want you to create an account and then join the class using this code, VUCUSIH. Now, because I've had problems in the past where kids kept forgetting their account information and constantly remaking new accounts, and I would end up having, 4 kids with the same name. I want to be a little bit more streamlined. So your account information should be the following. Your username is going to be your school email. So for me, it would be jclow at wfsd.k12.ny.us. Your password is going to be PHY followed by your ID number. So this is a fake ID number, but in my example, it would be PHY 1005587. That's it. Easy peasy. Just do this, and that way you should never forget your password. Or if you do, you can easily ask someone, and they'll remind you, oh, it's your school email, and then the password is PHY, your ID number. Now, if ends up being a problem and you're having trouble actually using this code, let me know as soon as possible so I can notify people and have you change it. Uh, I'm going to try to limit these videos to be about 10 to 15 minutes, not including answering questions. So I do want to try to limit it as best as I can. I do apologize if it goes over. This video is actually right now over the 15-minute mark. I apologize, but hey, you're just going to be relaxing and listening to my amazing voice. Really quickly about attendance. So you're required to attend class every day, both in person and virtually. Now, the in person one's easy. I'm not going to explain that one. But as far as the virtually goes, you're not really expected to have to come into a meeting per se at a specific time. Instead, what you're going to end up having to do is anytime you're attending virtually, there's going to be a do now question based off of the material so far that you're expected to answer. The do now question, I'm going to try to get it through Canvas. And essentially, this question it needs to be done before the school day ends. So before 2:10, you need to be able to answer this question in order to be marked in attendance. If you end up doing it later, it's either going to count as a late or an absence. We're still figuring it out, so I'll explain that in a little bit more detail. But for the most part, you just want to make sure you get those do now questions. And I'm going to try to make them on the simpler side. Again, it's going to be based off of completion, not correctness. And then I'm also going to post the Ed puzzle videos onto Canvas. And again, these are things that you're expected to complete. My goal is to get 3 videos a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Again, 10 to 15 minutes, and then Tuesday, Thursday are probably going to be worksheet days or something, practice problems days. Classroom policies, I sort of kind of explained it with the whole class participation. It kind of falls into what's expected in the behavior and the effort category. You want to make sure that you come to class prepared with all the materials. I don't have pencils, and especially now, sharing pencils is going to be very tricky. So you want to make sure that you come into class with pencils and paper and all that stuff. In fact, if you want, you can leave your binders somewhere in the room. So, I have areas that you can put them in so you don't have to keep lugging it. But for the most part, make sure you're come to class prepared. Throw out any garbage before you leave. Some people are probably going to be eating breakfast or eating lunch in my classroom, or maybe drinking something, drinking water. Make sure you throw it out. I tend to clean between periods and I don't like it, so just don't do it. That's also going to be part of like the whole behavior category. Uh, when the period, don't stand at the door before the period ends. Stay in your seat. I'll let you know when you can leave. Once the bell rings, then you can get up. And also, don't do other classwork or homework, or play video games, or be on your phone in this class. Again, it's pretty much disrespectful, and you'll be demoted points in that class participation. But honestly, the thing that I hate the most is hearing people say, I don't understand what's going on, when they're in the back on their phone watching a Netflix video. So, yeah, just don't do it. So another thing I want to note is don't complain or haggle. A lot of times I like to do things, I try to be fun. Like every now and then I'll say, hey, let's play a Kahoot game. And then someone goes, oh, well, I don't really like Kahoot. And then some people start complaining, and it makes me not want to do that anymore. Or they'll start saying, oh, if we win, can we get bonus points? And I'll say, no, not really. And they say, come on, please. That usually makes me want to go the other way and start, saying, we'll never do a Kahoot again. So please don't complain. Now, the one thing I do want to point out is I do like to make deals. Deals where I will always win. A good example of a deal I will always win is, which I'll make right now, is that if you guys don't lose points on units on the first test, or sorry, first quiz, then you won't be expected to have to use units until the next test. So um, I'll explain that more if you want me to, but it is usually a good deal, and for the most part, I will always win that, because if you guys don't lose points on the test, That's good for me. It's less stuff for me to actually grade. Now, your behavior in this class, like always, should be respectful. Don't use inappropriate language. Don't, antagonize students. Just kind of keep everything at the door. Again, don't be late, cut class, all that type of stuff. Typical things with the absences, anything that you miss, you need to make sure you make up. If you know you're going to be late, try to get the material beforehand, or since all the material is going to be online, just make sure you get it there. Um, yeah, so you need to make sure that you make up all the material, and you're pretty much expected to make up anything the day you come back. Extra help. So for the most part, the way extra help's going to be is it's going to be mainly held after school, like normal time, virtually, Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, Fridays, as well as on Wednesdays. In Wednesday, the extra help will most likely run during the class block. So whatever time you would have seen me on Wednesday, that's the extra help. Now, if you want, I teach three physics lessons, so I teach three sections. You can go to any of those extra help sessions. So that's nice. I'll actually post the times later on. Just make sure that when you come in that you try to come in with a question and try to be interactive. It gets really boring on my part when I have to sit in a quiet room with people and no one's asking questions. And like I said, try to come with a question. I need help on blank. Don't just say teach me everything, because it's really hard on my point of, being able to narrow down on exactly what you're having trouble with. Some helpful tips. The first one, make sure that you organize and that you're practicing the problems. It's the best way to actually learn stuff. The next one, be patient. Not everyone gets physics in the beginning. I know it can be frustrating sometimes when you look over and you're talking to a friend and you find out that they're barely doing any work and yet they're getting much better grades than you and you're working your butt off. It's unfortunate, but just be patient, because you might be a late bloomer in that case. The best example that I can give is, um, it's like walking into a room that's pitch black. Some people will adjust to that darkness much quicker than other people. So some of you in the beginning may be bumping into tables and chairs and hurting yourself and falling down. But as long as you stick with it and you keep trying, eventually your eyes will adjust to the darkness, and you will end up understanding what's going on. Just like in this class, you will eventually adapt to this class and you will start to understand it. But again, it requires you to put in the work, the practice, and actually taking into account my advice. And the other one is get involved. Don't sit there. This physics is not passive. Physics requires you to actually do practice problems, to be active in that. In fact, it's kind of like training for a sport. You don't just watch someone train and say, okay, I can now do that. I can't watch someone run a marathon and say, now I can do that. I can do that exact thing. No, that's not how that works. Same thing applies here. You can't just watch me do a problem and expect that you'll be able to do it. It's just like exercising a muscle. You have to practice doing the problems yourself if you're ever going to uh, learn it yourself. Um, one of these things. So just this kind of goes back to the being in contact. Just please try to stay in contact with me. I had an issue where someone at the very end of last year brought it to my attention that they were struggling with balancing work and the quarantine and their own outside classwork and all that stuff. Uh, but by that point, it was too late for me to actually adjust anything because it was literally the last day. So if she had brought it to my attention earlier, I could have actually done something about it. Same thing applies here. If you're having trouble meeting deadlines for stuff, let me know and I will try to work with you. But the one thing I have to say is that I need to be notified earlier rather than later. If you notify me the day of, like, 10 minutes before you're expected to hand it in, or the day after, I just kind of assume that that's probably a, like, hey, I forgot about it, so I'm trying to get you know, um, extra time. So notify me sooner rather than later. And again, you can contact me through Remind. So I guess I don't actually have anything in here, but Remind is the program that we use in this class in order for you to actually contact me as well as get announcements from me. So make sure that you download the Remind app, set the notification so you can hear it. If you look on the Canvas on the main site, there should be a code for this class. Again, my recommendation when you're making an account, use the same username and password that you would do for the Edpuzzle. All right. Good luck, and we're in this together, and I'm gonna try my best to try to give you the greatest chance at getting a perfect score on that Regents. I'm gonna try to break it down as best I can, and I'm gonna try to be there and help you as much as I can. If you need help, let me know, and I will try my best. All right. If you have any questions, please feel free to send me a remind. Again, I apologize for the length, but I'll see you guys later. Bye.